But you worked with so many people from Hogan to Grill Monsoon, Bobby Heenan, Mr. Perfect,
Oh,
Million
yeah.
Dollar Man, Jake the Snake. But who was the easiest to work with, and who was the hardest to work with, and why was that the Ultimate Warrior?
Yeah. Well, God, there were so many. I mean, I got along with pretty much everybody. There was, I had my favorites. Jim or Hacksaw was, you know, the
King
guy is a
Hacksaw right there.
comedian. Yeah, he's like a professional comedian. He was so funny then. Uh, then he was around a lot, but like Hillbilly Jim, because he wasn't wrestling that much at the time, so he was kind of an ambassador. Freddie Blassie was another one of my great mentors at the time. He lived not far. He lived in near Scarsdale there, and so he was up all the time. And he was kind of an ambassador. He was one of these guys that was in for life, and Vince took care of him. And he would go to all these charity events, and I would go with Freddie.
Wow.
And it was that is a book on its own. I should write a book.
You and Classy Freddie
Hanging
hanging
with
out?
Freddie. Oh yeah, because we'd go to golf tournaments, and Freddie, of course, couldn't play because every part of his body was fused. But he would ride in the cart with me, and just harass people. And he would,
Hey, pencil
at
neck
these
geek.
golf tournaments. Yeah, these golf tournaments, they would, longest drive, closest to the pin. Well, Freddie would do things like where he would move the longest drive, and he put my name on it. He would do stuff like that. So at the end of the tournament, they'd be announcing, and then oh, longest drive, Sean Mooney on 17. I'd be like,
Me?
Jesus, Freddie, and they'd be like, I'd win a golf bag and like have to give it back, and like, oh, this is awesome, but
But
or,
sorry, yeah,
but
that's
yeah, he
amazing.
would do, yeah, and it was just, that's just kind of the way it was. Anyway, getting back to your question there, I loved working with Kurt Hennig. Kurt was one of my favorite people. Um, surprisingly, people always are a little surprised, like Randy Savage was another guy that I really, had a great relationship with. It took a long time, and there's a story behind that too. But once you were in with him, and he trusted you, whatever that meant. But he was awesome, and I respected him so much because of the way he worked. People could say what they want about how he controlled things or what, but he was a incredible businessman, and he was tight with money, like people was talking about. He saved his money, but he also knew you got to spend it to for his popularity, for his character, and he would spend thousands of dollars on those outfits, and he'd have three or four a night. And I remember times where he would go out there where I would just be amazed that he even showed up. The time he had he had a really bad staph infection in his elbow, and he went out there and
Yeah,
worked his ass off. And
WrestleMania 5.
I remember asking him, one time, how do you do this? And he's like, brother, people going out there to spend their money every night. I got to give them what they pay, what they paid for. I mean, that's how he looked at it. And that kind of came from his roots, where, his family and playing the arenas where you could probably not even call it an arena, but 200 people, maybe less, 50,
Yeah.
and all the way up. And a lot of guys were like that. On the difficult side, yeah, Jim was tough. I mean, Warrior, uh, but I think that had a lot of things to do. I have a lot of empathy for him, and even at the time where this guy came out of nowhere, really. I mean, it's not like he hadn't wrestled before, but that amount of fame that he took, and he was an outsider. At the time, that's like I mentioned, how it was a different world, whether you were on one side or the other. And he certainly didn't help himself as far as, being defiant in many ways. And he was very stiff working, and he paid the price for that, dearly. But there were times, where we'd be at some kind of a, promotion where he would be signing pictures, and he would sign pictures and never even look up. He'd just be flipping the pictures. I'd be looking like this guy, like, what the hell, dude? But then the next time he would be on a knee with a kid for 20 minutes talking to
Okay.
this kid. So whether it was the stuff he was doing or whatever, but there was kind of two sides to him and I had a lot of conversations with him, backstage, because he didn't really hang out in the main areas with the guys or anything like that. So, for him, I think that it was just too much. He didn't have good people around him advising him. You know, he always got the people in his ear going like, "What you putting up with that?" And you got this, you got it over them. They got, and who knows? I wasn't
Right.
part of that,
Of
but
course.
yeah, but he could be tough. That's for sure. I mean, you you go into those interviews thinking everybody's a professional here, and I knew what was going to go on, and somebody's and I was kind of the you didn't really we weren't supposed to touch me. I was the credible journalist, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
but sometimes it went off the rails. That's how it went. And with Jim, you didn't know. And a lot of times I remember after those interviews, I'd be going, "What did this say?" And people ate it up. I'm like,
They did. I ate
I
it
don't know
up.
what that was about. Yeah. The third aliens visiting from wherever, and
Yes.
and I
Yeah.
think I think he's trying to play off because Hulk. One of the great things I remember Hulk telling me early on about his interviews, and he said, you notice I don't talk about wrestling when I do it. Necessarily. There's always going down the Pacific Coast Highway, brother, and on my Harley, and
Oh
he'd
yeah.
bring it all back into the thing. But that's what made it so entertaining. And I think maybe Jim kind of took a page from that, but it was like, okay, yeah,
Yes.
but it worked, right?
That's true. He did make money, and
Yeah,
he did put butts in the seats,
and he did.
sacrifices of the
All he had,
skeletons, and
all he had to do was run out and then shake the ropes, and that was no matter whatever happened after that didn't matter.
yeah, that's true. I think too fat, too much, too soon. And like you said, people are probably whispering in his ear about doing
Yeah,
things. And again, in wrestling and really any industry, there's politics. Everyone wants to be number one, the number one, sports athlete, number one, anything in any industry. So obviously,
yeah,
dealing
and
with
it's
Hogan and Savage on top with Warrior trying to climb up too and being forced that way by Vince McMahon, obviously too. It's not like
yeah,
he was like, oh, he was having 5-star matches, but he's doing a great job selling his product, selling who he was. And I'll never forget him saying that he was going to grab Hulk Hogan's airplane and drive it right into a mountain.
yeah,
And I'm
it's
like,
whatever. Yeah.
I'm
Okay,
sorry. What are we doing here?
yeah,
We're murdering Hulk Hogan? Is that
yeah,
this is at 10 in the morning, right? It's 10 o'clock in the morning. The show airs in my town.
yeah.
What's going on here?